Hello, Whovians and subscribers everywhere, and welcome to my latest Doctor Who review, where today I review the sixth and final story of Doctor Who Season 22, which is Colin Baker's first season as the Sixth Doctor. Revelation of the Daleks. So, the basic plot of this story is as follows. The Doctor and Peri arrive on the planet Necros to visit a facility called Tranquil Repose, where the wealthy can have their bodies cryogenically frozen until medical science can cure them of their ailment. The Doctor wishes to pay his last respects to his friend, Professor Arthur Stengos, but it turns out this is just a ruse to lure him into a trap. The great healer masterminding the ruse is in fact Davros, who has been using the organic material in cryogenic storage to create a whole new army of Daleks to conquer the universe. So there we are, that's the plot of this story. Okay, Revelation of the Daleks. Well, this is an interesting one. Before I go any further, I just want to thank Nicholas Payne for lending me the DVD, once again. Very much appreciated. I'm going to be completely honest when I say that I don't like this one very much. I know that's becoming a bit of a regular thing with the Colin Baker reviews, that I'm not liking a lot of his stories. But, I mean, honestly, hand on heart, I am going into these stories, completely blind. I've never seen them before. I'm not trying to cast any prejudgments, but I just don't like this one. This isn't a rant. This isn't like a rant-worthy story, but it's just incredibly dull and unengaging, and that's my problem. It really is just dull. Another thing I have with this story is the tonal inconsistencies. I just feel that this story is tonally confused. Like, it's trying to be a bit more darker and serious, a bit like Resurrection of the Daleks, so probably not to the same extent as that, but it does contrast with some really weird, campy humour. Like, we have this random American DJ who's in the story for no reason, and he has this gun that can blast music that will stop the Daleks. Yeah, weird. And basically another issue with the story is the fact that the Doctor and Peri don't really do anything. I mean, they spend the first 25 minutes wandering around, and then they finally get to the base or wherever, and then they don't do much there either, and they're basically sidelined by the supporting cast. The supporting cast who, yeah, they do a good job for the most part. I mean, well, some of them overact a bit, but I get the feeling that this story is helmed by the supporting cast. Colin Baker and Nicola Bryant are completely wasted and underused in this story. I'm also sick of the bickering between the Doctor and Peri. They've lost the dynamic they had when she was with Davison. Honestly, she has a better dynamic with Davison than she did with Colin Baker. Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, as for their performances are fine. I've got no issue with the performances. I think Colin Baker, he does a bit better. This could potentially be his best performance so far. Again, that's not saying an awful lot, considering my opinion of his Doctor. I'm not a big fan of Colin Baker's Doctor, but I think by this point, he's not too bad in this story, although he does continue to bicker with Peri, and he does continue to act very condescending, and he complains about her weight for some reason, although I mean, look at her, she's fine. She is not overweight at all. So that's a little unwarranted, I think. But that's the script, really, more than him. Colin is legitimately alright. He's a bit over the top in places, but this is probably his best performance so far. Nicola Bryant is great as Peri. She is the best thing about the story. She is honestly giving a great performance, and again, her American accent is perfect. She's made it work by this point. So I don't know, it's not going to be long before we lose Peri, so we're going to make the most of her before she goes. Davros, yes, Terry Malloy returns as Davros. He was previously in the Davison Daleks story, Resurrection of the Daleks, and he makes his comeback here. And I actually do think Terry Malloy is a bit better in this story than he was previously. He was very shouty in the previous story, the Resurrection of the Daleks. In this one, he isn't as shouty. Although, weirdly enough, he's this sort of decoy head Davros, and then that gets destroyed, and then we reveal the real Davros, which doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why they bothered with that, because it doesn't really add anything to the story, and for one thing, I just think the story is really boring. There is nothing going on in this story. What is this whole trap? Like, literally, Davros just wants to conquer the world again with Daleks. Like, big whoop. Been there, done that, seen it all before, basically. There's this other supporting character, I don't know her name, I'm sorry. She wears like sort of bun hairs, and she's like an assistant to Professor Jobel, and she actually has feelings for him. She's in love with him. And they build this up to the moment where she actually has to kill him which completely feels weightless, and you just don't invest in any of these supporting characters. There's also the character of Kara, played by Eleanor Bron. She doesn't really do much. Mostly people stand around and talk. They either talk or they die. That's it. It's a story without much consequence, really. There is not much going on here. The name of the character is Tassam Becker, actually, who's played by Jenny Thomasin, I believe. Yeah, she's the one who is in love with Joe Bell, and unfortunately it leads to her killing him. I just don't understand what was the point of this story. Like, I mean, okay, you've got the Daleks in there and Davros is back, and the Daleks aren't bad. I mean, the designs are quite good. We've got some renegade Daleks, which are like the grey ones, and then there's the other ones which are white, or sort of beige and gold, and they have the gold balls on them, which are okay, you know, they're not too bad, but the voices, oh god, the voices are really bad. They're just incredibly camp. They don't really come across as menacing at all. And it's a real disappointment to really say that, you know, these Daleks are the ones that Colin Baker comes across. It's a real shame. When the character of Natasha comes across her father, who is being turned into a Dalek, the makeup on him is incredible. That is a very chilling scene. It's a very dark and intense scene. They come across these brains and then they realise that they're trying to turn the humans into Daleks, which is really quite scary. And I think that scene is very effective on an emotional level as well, because she is forced to kill her own father to put him out of his misery because he's being turned into a Dalek. And yeah, she's definitely the character who has the most emotional baggage in this story, and you really do feel like it's hard for her. Maybe they should have just told the story from her point of view, obviously with the Doctor and Perry being more centrally focused. So then the audience may have had more of an emotional hook to the story. They may have actually felt something. That's the problem I have with this story. It just feels so weightless. Other than that scene, which is the one scene which really did actually make an impact for me, the rest of it just felt completely bleh, like utterly irrelevant. And yep, I'm not surprised they cancelled it after this, or they tried to, and then it went on hiatus, and then it came back, etc., etc. But it really is just a pointless story. Also, the Doctor doesn't encounter Davros until the last 15 minutes of the story. That is ridiculous. That's not good enough. I'm sorry. The Doctor and Davros should have had more conflict throughout the story. It takes too long for the Doctor to get to Davros. It takes too long for the Doctor and Perry to get involved in the story. And then by the time they're actually there, it's just pointless. You just don't care by that point. Although, that being said, the sets and production design are very good. The music is pretty bad, though. I don't like the music. And again, like I said, the tonal inconsistencies, like the stupid comedy with the DJ, and then the overly intense dark stuff with the guy being turned into the Dalek and then his daughter having to kill him. You know, it's like they clearly have no idea what the tone of the show is anymore. And I am honestly not surprised that this was the season that kind of put the show on the brink of cancellation. So yeah, it's a real shame, and I feel sorry for Colin and Nicola. I really do, because this is Colin's first season, and he wanted to make a good impression as the Doctor. He really did, but I just think, you know, writing his Doctor this way was wrong. I just think his Doctor was completely out of character for most of the season. But anyway, we'll get to that in a sec. So just to kind of round it off, I don't have too much to say about it. I do think it's nice to have Davros back, and I think Terry Molloy gives a good performance. The performers are good, but the story is dull, unengaging. And the end of part 1, when the statue falls on the Doctor, I think is a bit silly as well. So I think I'll just close this one off and give this story a 4 out of 10. I'm giving it a 4 because, unlike Attack of the Cybermen, it actually moves at a decent pace. You know, it actually moves a little bit quicker than that story, although it's still pretty long and draggy. It does get a bit slow in places. So now we come to the final part of this video, where I do my mini ranking of season 22. This is an interesting one, and of course the Twin Dilemma is not included on this list because it was part of season 21, which was Davison's final season. Weirdly enough, this is my own subjective list, so if anyone disagrees, that's fine, but just be polite about it. And please leave your lists down below. I'd love to know what everyone else thinks. So, to kick this off, number 6, Time Lash. Number 5, The Two Doctors. Number 4, Attack of the Cybermen. Number 3, Revelation of the Daleks. Number 2, Mark of the Rani. And number 1, Vengeance on Varos. So season 22, yeah, this is a lot of people's least favourite season, and I can understand why. This is a very different season to what we got previously with Davison. It's not very good, to be honest. Most of the stories are pretty rubbish in this season, which is a shame. I like Vengeance on Varos. That's kind of the only good one, really, which is a shame. And then you've got Mark of the Rani, which is passable. I gave it a pass. I wasn't too harsh on it. The season as a whole, I think, is very polarizing. I think it just wasn't a good time for the show. People were losing interest, and people just weren't connecting with Colin Baker. And I think Colin Baker's Doctor was just very... He was very out of character. He was written very weirdly. His dynamic with Perry was very weird, because it was one minute they'd be friendly with each other, the next minute he'd be bickering with her, and he'd just be very negative towards her, and it's just very frustrating to see that. And again, Colin's Doctor, it just doesn't appeal to me. He just really doesn't. I'm sorry. The costume is terrible. His performances range from pretty bad to okay. Again, I think Colin is a nice guy. I just don't think he was treated very well during the show as well, so that didn't help. But in terms of his Doctor, he hasn't brought anything new to the role so far. So I haven't mentioned this yet. In every story, he wears a cap badge. I mean, obviously, like, Davison used to wear a stick of celery on him, and now Colin Baker wears a cap badge. I don't really get that, personally. It's another gimmick from J&T. But, yeah, it is a real shame that they were going to pull the plug on the show after this season, and thankfully, with a good amount of protests, they said, okay, fine, the show will come back, but it will be another year and a half. So it's about another year and a half without Doctor Who before we get season 23, which is Colin's second and final season, Trial of a Time Lord. So that will be my next review. Although, just to clarify, I'm going to be reviewing Trial of a Time Lord in the 4 individual story parts. Technically, it is one story, but I'm going to review them as 4 separate stories. And I might give an overall rating for Trial of a Time Lord. I'm not sure if I'll bother, to be honest. I mean, you can just add up my scores from the individual reviews and then add it out of 40. That's what you can do if you want. But I didn't do that for Key to Time, so I won't do it for Trial of Time. I'll just treat it as 4 separate stories. I mean, of course, they're all sort of continuing after each other because it is one massive story. And it will be Colin's final set of reviews that I'll be doing, and then we're finished with Colin Baker. Yeah, there's not much left. Thank you very much for watching this review, and thanks to Nicholas Payne once again. Please subscribe to him. As well, stay tuned for my next review, which I believe is The Mysterious Planet. Yeah. So, oh god, that'll be fun. I mean, if it's anything like this, then, well, we'll see. But yeah, season 22, please leave your ranking and thoughts down below. What do you think of it? This is a very interesting season, I know, to discuss about. But anyway, thanks very much for watching, and until next time, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. See you soon. Bye for now.